Operation Recover All Loot, Ora, Abusuya, President Mahama, finally, ono ankasa, akasa, wa intervene, wa order, Attorney General, and Chief Justice, Paul Bafubonia, or say, cases, Operation Recover All Loot, investigations, course, ababidi, nsem na abusuya, disi ano, wa order, se, fast track, process, no, na say, se, face trials and as a jail no yede eko na ono ankasa time 2024 December elections campaign ekoso no oka edisi ne bo se enya ade a ode obi a wabo oman no krono bia ho beche no ono ankasa ka se NPP amanyuku no oman no masa corruption a etwa ye ho ahia no enye corruption ketwa enti no ono ankasa tenase no wo hwa aneoma eche enti no sisi akra no omasa nso afa private investigation sector bia omonso investigations abusuya omode eboa attorney general se ne be ye be fast track prosecutions enye asam keto akwanti president Mahama nsem bi aba betudwa sisi ano attorney general any chief justice docket bia etese yoko any sa private legal sector no omonso file bia no sisi ade abusuya system no mu ba bayehye president Mahama akasa mom yenko na yenkonkoti ensema president Mahama de etudwa efa operation recover all loot and accountability no on subscribe and hit on the notification bell so na any update be drop no onso onsa ebetumi aka gossip politics TV so madam ase
questioning the effectiveness and the pace at which Oral is running in the anti-corruption fight, despite a pre-election pledge of effective prosecution. Now, the president gave this hint during a meeting with civil society organizations yesterday at the Jubilee House. Take a look.
I remember when I came into the presidency in this second incarnation, I said the whole of Ghana was a crime scene. There are some cases that we're even now finding out. I mean, there are some audits that are coming that are showing new things that we didn't even know about. In all the work that the Oral Committee did, it flagged 32 cases. And out of those 32 cases, the processes have gone on. The minister has the statistics. Investigations are advanced, some are in court, others are being prepared, the dockets are being prepared to be taken to court. But even outside the 32 cases, there are new cases that, crop up that we didn't know about or even didn't envisage. And so the way to go is with the constraints of the investigative bodies and the Attorney General's department. We are exploring the possibility of finding some private legal firms to help in docket building and building the cases so that we can send them to court. But once it gets to the court, we don't have control over the courts. The law must take its course, and as I said, justice is in the bosom of the judge, and they will determine eventually whether a person is.
Well, that's the president clearly there, and Martin Bebo's position is publicly known on this recommendation. He's been consistent about it. And here's where I bring in another private legal practitioner who has expressed this particular view at some point earlier last year. Justice Abdullahi is a lecturer at the UPSC Law Faculty, also a legal practitioner. Justice Abdullahi, good evening. Thank you for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. And first off, you heard the president there. There's now the idea being molded, or the consideration of having private firms now take up some of the cases under the Operation Recover or Loot. A good consideration, you would say?
I think that these days you guys would have to be paying me for some of my positions. If you remember, when ORA was put together, I recommended that the president put together a team, purposely, a specific purposefully team to investigate the oral allegations and prosecute same because of the volume of work and the attention that needed to be paid to the oral. So it takes the burden from the Attorney General's office directly onto the private hands. In the same recommendation, luckily I made all these recommendations on TV3. I also advocated for the Attorney General to license private law firms and lawyers to take up the multiplicity of prosecutions and free up the little hands in the Attorney General's office to focus on other businesses. I'm of the strongest opinion in making all these recommendations that the private sector playing a critical role in the fight against corruption is a key to unlocking all the political interferences and the political difficulties that the Office of the Attorney General is going through. Because if the private man is responsible, he will make sure he delivers. And when he delivers, he knows that he gets value for money. But all of us are beneficiaries. But mind you, let's all remind ourselves that these recommendations are not necessarily in saying that it is only when one secures conviction that you would have done your job. Because there are times where just the fact of prosecution is enough to tell the story and also expose acts of corruption and other things. Mm-hmm. And so you may go into this battle and may lose, but at the end of the day, you still achieve the objective of fighting corruption because anyone else sitting on the fence will now know that he will never have it that easy if he's caught. And that he's going to answer, he's going to account for his stewardship. And so it is important and imperative that we commend the president for listening to some of these recommendations and advocacies that we've been making from a year and a half ago when he assumed office. That's true. And for all these public advocacy that we have been mounting for the fight against corruption and then the reduction in white-colored crimes, among other things.
I see. But you know what? This is coming at a time when I've spoken to the likes of Daniel Yardemela, the former Auditor General, who hold the view that the reason why he believes some of these oral cases will even go beyond the 4 years of John Dramani Mahama, beyond 2028, as a matter of fact, is that there are lawyers who have mastered the act of taking advantage of the loopholes in the judicial system to prolong cases beyond a particular period. There are some cases in this country, corruption-related cases that have run for 6 years, 7 years, and there'll be no as it were, decisions made on them. And then also he talks about the weaknesses in the system where some of these people who are standing trial under these corruption cases have deep pockets. They have money to pay their way to freedom if they want to. Okay? So taking into consideration all of these, plus the fact that this is a major matter of the fight against corruption, that's oral, what should be the consideration in the selection of the private legal firms who would have to be partnering the Attorney General in prosecuting oral cases? What should be the threshold of integrity for these law firms, private law firms, who, that is, if this is going to be implemented, who should be considered, taking into consideration the intricacies involved in this fight against corruption with the oral cases that we're seeing?
Indeed, Albert, I completely agree with you. I think the easiest part of this answer is that among ourselves as lawyers, legal practitioners across the country, we all know each other. That is the best advantage in this whole enterprise. Or just throw out a name, and everybody, every lawyer you encounter would either tell you the good stories about that person or give you the kind of reference that you would never even want to engage that lawyer. For you sitting on the fence, or you not being a lawyer or not being within that space, you probably might not know. But within lawyers, there are names that you mention, and readily everybody knows this is a no-go area. So are there other names and firms that when you mention, whether the person belongs to or agrees to your political persuasion or not, there is that high regard, that high respect, that integrity that is imbued in that law firm or that individual practicing the law from that office. And so that would be the first mark. Naturally, the second mark would be a sieving mechanism to pick out the good from the chaff, so as to be able to come out with the best possible persons, because there could be others who would be compromised by virtue of the price tag in the corruption scandals and maybe motivations, as you refer to. Because if I'm a lawyer and then I know that, for instance, I stand to gain, let's say, 1,000 cedis from a case, and my opponent is giving me 10,000. Chances are that if you are a greedy person, you are likely to be corrupted and be swayed in doing that. But that is where your integrity comes in. And that is where also we have to put in place mechanisms to select people who will be worth their name, who are not simply coming into this to play games. Obviously, there will be other considerations, not necessarily just motivating others to look elsewhere. There will be also political considerations. Some people may, for instance, belong to or may be in line with the same political persuasion as the people being prosecuted. Chances are that by virtue of their political leanings, they may be willing to do the bidding of the person, not because the person has compromised him in any way, any form or shape, but because he thinks that this person belongs to his political persuasion, and so the person getting acquitted will be the best way to go. All these are factors that would have to be considered in selecting the people, right, or the lawyers and the law firms that would be interested in doing these kinds of prosecutions. It is imperative that a lot more go into the selection processes to right, avoid the possibilities of compromises from all kinds of backgrounds.
I say, but then again, this form, it would only be solving a part of the bigger problem of the Attorney General's office being overwhelmed with the number of cases that they have to prosecute under oral. Because even if this whole consideration is implemented and private firms are brought in, the Attorney General's office will still have to exercise oversight responsibility over these private firms, is it not?
Indeed, you cannot delegate a power to a person without ensuring that the person is applying those powers to the standards that you expected of the person. And so naturally, I would expect that the AG sets up an office that would purposefully supervise, or may not necessarily supervise, but ensure that standards are being met, reports are being put in, and then to as it were, come to that form of conclusion that you just didn't throw away your powers, delegated power to somebody who'd use it for his own selfish interest. And so there would be the need to have either the Director of Public Prosecutions Office, a unit from there, for instance, being in charge of these law firms. Already, let's remember that the AG has the Legal Aid Office at its disposal, and the Legal Aid Office is headed by directors and other people who are in charge of similar things, except that those things that the AG is doing from the legal aid angle is a little different to the extent that you are dealing with the indigent and those without adequate resources to pay for the services of a lawyer. And so this is not completely unique from that angle. Second, it's also not completely unique because the AG has already delegated some powers to the police and other security agencies to prosecute on his behalf, like the YOCO and other security agencies. So these things are already happening without a specific unit supervising them. But once this particular license is coming under a uniquely different regime, not a public institution, but rather a private individual or a private law firm to do this, I would expect that there will be a unit or a person, a reporting officer who would be taking reports from the persons and the institutions, or the firms, to be appointed to oversee these activities. And I would strongly recommend that it be not limited to just the oral prosecutions, but it should actually be expanded to include all prosecutions. And in fact, the prosecution by the police service in particular being withdrawn, because it is the bane of one of our problems. And so if you withdraw the prosecution from the police, and entrust that to the private person, I think we rather get more value for money than what we are presently doing. So that police can also focus on their core activities and mandate.
Right. Justice Abdullah, I appreciate you for this. Thank you so much for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. He is a lecturer at UPS Law Faculty, also a legal practitioner, Justice Abdullah there. And you want to also understand why there's also even the consideration of bringing in private legal or law firms to help the Attorney General in prosecuting oral cases, because a plethora of cases, quite a number of them, that have been captured under oral, and just about a few of them are actually being prosecuted now in court. The National Signals Bureau, which was not even captured in the oral report, we didn't know about it until this administration came into power. And we have the National Service scandal. Then you have also the buffer stock company as well, and then also Chairman Wontumi as well. You have it in there. So they're just a few. But if you look at the oral report, this is a presentation that the oral preparatory team themselves prepared. Why the justification for oral? They put the 2 billion banking sector cleanup. That's number one. We haven't heard anything of that in terms of going to court on this matter. Presidential jet travels, the National Cathedral. Nothing of that in court as yet. And then you have also the ambulance, this ambulance scandal, you remember. And then also the Sputnik V vaccine. The last time Phyllis Kwatiofosu spoke, we got an update that the man you see here, the former health minister, has been questioned. The COVID expenditure as well, that has not even been touched. Then we have the Frontiers COVID testing issue that came up as well. Then there's the Bank of Ghana corporate office matter that came up, this Bank of Ghana head office. This $222.7 million you see there, the last time we got an update was we hear that after some extensive audit, that figure has shot up to $400 million, that Bank of Ghana head office. Then you have this Pualugu multipurpose dam matter. Quite a number of them. Look, there are so many of them that have not been touched. This stadium innovation, the Esipon Stadium, Tamale Accra Stadium innovations, you remember, that was a matter that came up. This one as well, the All Africa Games, operational expenses for the 13th Africa Games, that has not been touched as well. SML, the special prosecutor is on the path with that one as well. And then some printing of monies, West Blue, all of these have not been touched as yet, but it's been captured under oral. In fact, it can go on and on. You have PDS, there's so many of them. SkyTrain is in court. Yes, it's one of the few that is in court as well, being pursued by the Attorney General. Also, you have Cecilia Dapas, which is still running. And then there's this as well, all of this, the DRAPE, the Buankra Inland Port, Moshosho Rice. So Phyllis Kwatiofosu, who is the Minister in charge of Government Communication, also has been speaking to me, giving an update on some of these cases, how far they've gone with it.
Okay, Abusuya wene ensema ekoso ewo political highway. So President Mahama and I yetene nkase odisa ensem no tudwa ede amaya enye asem ketwa krabeda mase samaje pene kokoti sa ensem we ede mai aha gossip politics TV so madam mase.